Here is section 1 of your infidelity story script, minimum 760 words, clean and to the point, with no fluff or repetition, and focused on high-quality narration suitable for a faceless video. I married Ethan 5 years ago, after being a single mom to my son Liam for over a decade. At the time, Ethan was stable, grounded, and kind, everything I thought I needed. He had a daughter from his previous marriage, Maya, who was quiet but respectful. We blended our family slowly, cautiously. Liam was 16, Maya was 19, and though they weren't exactly close, there was never any hostility between them. Things weren't perfect, but I believed we were all doing our best to make it work. The first year was uneventful. But slowly, something began to shift. Ethan started pulling away. It wasn't dramatic. Just 100 small moments. Skipped dinners, staying late at work, forgotten birthdays, little lies that didn't add up. When I'd ask, he always had a reasonable explanation. I stopped pushing. I didn't want to be the paranoid wife. And maybe I didn't want to face the truth. Liam, on the other hand, was changing in ways I couldn't explain. He was always a little guarded, but lately, he'd become sharper. Restless. He quit college after one semester, claiming it wasn't for him. He spent long nights locked in his room or out walking, sometimes coming home past midnight without saying a word. I chalked it up to stress or maybe depression. I offered therapy. He refused. But he was still kind to me. Still called me Mom in the same soft voice he used when he was 5. He just didn't like Ethan. I tried to get them to connect. I asked Ethan to spend time with him, watch a game, go fishing like they used to. Ethan always made an excuse. He doesn't want me around, he'd say. He's just moody. Let him be. So I let him be. And I hated myself a little for it. One evening, I noticed Maya staring at Ethan across the dinner table. Not a loving gaze. Not a daughter to a father. It was fleeting, but sharp enough to lodge itself in my mind. I looked at Ethan, who didn't notice. Or pretended not to. Maya looked away quickly and excused herself. I convinced myself I imagined it. I didn't want to start seeing things that weren't there. A week later, I found Maya in the kitchen late at night, crying. I asked what was wrong. She looked startled, wiped her eyes, and said it was nothing. Just tired, she whispered. I reached to hug her, but she stiffened. Like my touch hurt her. That was the second moment something shifted in me. Not anger. Not even suspicion. Just a cold awareness that something was brewing beneath the surface. Something I wasn't part of. Natalie, my best friend, visited a few days later. She'd known me since before Ethan. I confided in her about how strange things felt at home. About Ethan being distant, Maya crying, Liam growing more angry every day. Natalie didn't hesitate. She said, "You need to start paying attention. Ethan's been different for a while, hasn't he?" I nodded. And Maya's always around him, she added. Just watch. Don't ignore what your gut is screaming at you. I brushed her off, but deep down I knew she was right. That evening, I waited until Ethan went to bed, and I checked his phone. It was locked. Not his usual code. He'd changed it. I told myself that was normal, people value privacy. But he never used to hide things. I was quiet the next few days, watching more carefully. Maya barely looked at me. Ethan didn't notice anything. Then one night, his phone lit up while he was in the shower. I didn't touch it, but I saw the message preview. It said, "I miss you already." No name. Just those 4 words. He came out a few minutes later, towel around his waist, and picked up the phone without a word. I acted like I hadn't seen anything. But my heart had already started to shut down. I asked Liam to join me for coffee the next morning. He stared at me for a long time before saying, "You know something's wrong, right?" I asked what he meant. He just shook his head and said, "You're not stupid. You see it too." I wanted to press him, but I was scared of what he'd say. Scared of what I already suspected. And most of all, I was scared to confirm what I was still pretending wasn't true. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying everything, the late nights, the changed passcode, Maya's gaze, the message. It wasn't solid proof. But it was enough to hollow me out. I couldn't help but wonder if I'd brought my son into a home built on lies. And for the first time in years, I looked at my husband and felt like I didn't recognize him at all. Here is section 2 of your story, a focused continuation with a minimum of 760 words, no repetition or filler, and written for impactful narration. I waited until Ethan left for work before opening his laptop. He rarely used it anymore, but it was still synced to his phone. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for, but something told me not to stop until I found it. The messages weren't obvious, nothing too bold, but the way Maya spoke to him didn't sound like a daughter. "You didn't say goodnight," one message read. Another said, "Do you still mean what you said last night?" There were gaps, deleted chunks, but enough left to make my stomach turn. When I confronted Maya later that evening, I kept my voice calm. She froze the moment I mentioned the messages. Her eyes filled with tears almost instantly. I asked her if something had happened between her and Ethan. She didn't answer directly. She just said, "It's not what you think." I pressed her again, and she broke. She said it started with a conversation after her breakup last year. Ethan had been kind to her, supportive. They started talking more. Then touching. She said, "I didn't plan it. But he made me feel like I wasn't broken." My world tilted. I asked her if they'd slept together. She didn't answer, just cried harder. That silence told me everything. She kept saying she was sorry, that she didn't mean to ruin everything. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. I couldn't even cry. All I could do was stare at her and feel something inside me die. When Ethan came home, I told him we needed to talk. I didn't mention Maya at first. I asked him if there was anything he wanted to confess. He looked confused, even offended. Then I said her name. He went pale. He said Maya had been going through a hard time. That she confused gratitude with affection. That nothing ever happened. But the more he spoke, the more defensive he became. He slipped up, mentioned a weekend I hadn't brought up, a moment I didn't know existed. He realized it too late. His face said it all. He begged me not to tell anyone. Said it was a mistake, a lapse in judgment. I didn't yell. I just stood there, numb, listening to a man I no longer recognized. He wasn't denying it anymore. He was trying to justify it. Trying to make it sound like something that just happened. Like he was the victim of circumstance. Liam overheard everything. He had been upstairs, but at some point, he came down. I'll never forget the look on his face. Not anger at first. Just disbelief. Then disgust. And finally, rage. He shouted at Ethan, cursed him out, shoved him against the wall. I had to pull him off. He turned to me and said, "How could you not see it?" Then he left. Slamming the door so hard it shook the house. I sat alone in the living room for hours. I didn't move. Didn't speak. My body felt like it belonged to someone else. I replayed every dinner, every quiet moment, every hug between Ethan and Maya that I once thought was sweet. Now it all looked different. Tainted. I remembered a night when Maya had fallen asleep on the couch and Ethan covered her with a blanket, brushing her hair back. I had smiled at the time. I thought he was being a good father. Now I wondered how long he'd been crossing lines I didn't see. I wanted to believe it was a moment of weakness. But it wasn't one moment. It was months of secrecy. Lies layered so carefully I'd started to question my own instincts. I thought back to how Maya avoided me. How Liam had started to resent Ethan without saying why. They'd both seen it. Felt it. I was the only one still trying to keep the illusion alive. I tried calling Liam that night. He didn't pick up. Sent a text a few hours later, "I need space." I couldn't blame him. I brought Ethan into our lives. I married a man I thought was safe. I created this family, and it broke from the inside. And the worst part was knowing I'd missed the signs, not because they weren't there, but because I didn't want to see them. Ethan stayed in the guest room that night. I couldn't even look at him. He had no shame. No remorse. Just fear of losing the life he built on deception. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering how I'd ever explain any of this to anyone. How do you tell people your husband fell in love with his own stepdaughter? That your son watched it all happen in silence? That you trusted the wrong person with everything that mattered? I didn't cry. Not then. There wasn't space for grief yet. Just the hollow echo of betrayal ringing in my chest. I wasn't just losing a husband. I was losing the version of myself that believed I could trust him. Here is section 3 of your story, direct, emotionally clear, and written with a minimum of 760 words, no repetition, no fluff, and fit for faceless narration. The next morning, I asked Ethan to leave. There was no yelling, no second chances, no drawn-out explanations. He tried to talk, tried to touch my hand, but I stepped back. I told him I didn't want to hear his version again. He packed a bag, kept his head down, and walked out without saying goodbye. I locked the door behind him, and for the first time in years, the house was quiet in a way that didn't feel safe. Maya had already gone to stay with her mother. She left a single note in her bedroom drawer that I found later. It didn't say much, just that she was sorry and confused. She wrote that she never meant for things to go that far. I didn't know if she was protecting him or still in denial, but either way, I knew I wasn't the one she was apologizing to. Liam didn't come home for 2 weeks. I called every other day, left voicemails, even messaged his best friend to make sure he was okay. He finally responded with a short message, still breathing. I didn't push. I just waited. When he came back, he was thinner, quieter, harder. He sat across from me in the kitchen and said, "You didn't deserve that." But neither did I. I nodded. He didn't stay long. He just needed me to hear it. And I did. I reported Ethan. I wasn't sure what would come of it, but I had to try. I brought screenshots, copies of messages, and my statement. Maya didn't press charges, but she didn't deny the relationship either. Detective Ruiz took the case seriously, said it was complicated but worth pursuing. Ethan was questioned. His job found out. He resigned within a week. Quietly. Like a man slipping away from the consequences he created. I started therapy. Not just for the betrayal, but for everything I ignored along the way. The small betrayals, the gut feelings I silenced, the things I let slide because I wanted peace. My therapist said it was common, people choose comfort over confrontation until it's too late. I hated how much that applied to me. Natalie stayed close. She brought groceries, helped clean the house, kept me company on nights when the silence got too loud. She never said, "I told you so." She just let me grieve in pieces. There was a day I couldn't get out of bed. She came over, opened the windows, made tea, and sat beside me for hours. No advice. Just presence. That was what I needed most, someone who didn't need to fix it. A month passed before I heard from Maya again. She sent a letter. Handwritten. Said she didn't know what real love looked like. That she mistook attention for care. That Ethan had filled a space she didn't know was empty. She admitted to initiating some of it but said he never stopped her. That he should have been the adult. That he wasn't. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She said she was going to therapy and hoped someday she could look in the mirror without shame. I read it 3 times. I didn't cry. I didn't feel relief or rage. Just a deep, aching sorrow. For her. For Liam. For what this house became under my watch. I kept the letter. Not as a reminder of what happened, but of what I survived. Liam eventually came back home, slowly. He didn't talk much, but his presence was steady. We started having coffee in the mornings again. Short conversations, but they mattered. He told me he was applying for jobs. Trying to move forward. I told him I was proud of him. He nodded, then paused, and said, "I'm proud of you too, Mom." I didn't know how much I needed to hear that until he said it. Some days are harder than others. Some mornings I wake up and still expect Ethan to walk through the door. Grief doesn't follow logic. It comes in waves, unexpected, sharp, and often silent. But every day I choose not to look away from the truth. I choose not to rewrite what happened. That's the only way healing has made sense to me. People talk about infidelity like it's a private wound, but what happened here destroyed more than a marriage. It fractured trust between parents and children, between siblings, between versions of ourselves we once believed in. That kind of damage doesn't get cleaned up with time. It needs truth. Brutal, uncomfortable truth. I no longer wait for apologies. I no longer search for closure from people who broke me. I find it in my own choices now. In knowing I didn't stay quiet. In knowing I protected what I could, even if it was too late for some things. We live differently now. Smaller, quieter, but more honest. Liam and I don't pretend everything's fine. We just keep going. Together. And that's more than I thought I'd have when everything fell apart. Some betrayals burn your house down. But sometimes, the ashes are where you finally learn to breathe again. Here is section 4 of your story, direct, emotionally grounded, and written with a minimum of 760 words, continuing the narrative with no repetition, fluff, or filler. It's been a year since Ethan left. People ask how I'm doing, and I've learned to say I'm okay without flinching. The truth is more layered. I've rebuilt parts of my life, but there are scars that don't show. Trust, once broken in that way, doesn't heal neatly. It reshapes everything: how you love, how you listen to your instincts, how you walk into new rooms. I sold the house 6 months after everything collapsed. Too many ghosts. Every corner reminded me of a moment I misread. A smile that hid something else. A silence that was actually screaming. Liam agreed with the move. We both needed a new space, even if we couldn't start over emotionally. We found a small apartment, Just 2 bedrooms, nothing fancy. But it was ours. Clean slate, clean walls, no memories pressing in from all sides. Liam has changed. He still doesn't talk about Ethan. Not directly. But he's calmer. More focused. He works now, full-time, and he's saving for school again. He told me the other night that he doesn't want what happened to define his life. That he refuses to let Ethan's mistake become his burden. I admire him more than I can say. There were moments I feared I'd lost him forever to the bitterness, but he's stronger than I gave him credit for. He faced something no one should ever have to, and he came out the other side clearer, sharper. I've changed, too. I don't ignore my gut anymore. I ask questions. I don't let politeness silence my instincts. If something feels off, I sit with it, I examine it. I don't run from it. There's a kind of power in that, knowing you won't betray yourself just to keep peace. I used to think love meant trust by default. Now I know better. Real love earns trust daily. It doesn't hide behind secrets or manipulate silence. I see a therapist weekly. She doesn't ask me to forget. She asks me to see the full picture without blaming myself for not connecting it sooner. Healing hasn't been about erasing Ethan from my past. It's been about removing the shame I carried for letting him in. For believing in him. For thinking I could build something real with someone who wasn't honest from the start. She reminds me that self-forgiveness is harder than forgiving others, and she's right. Maya hasn't reached out again since her letter. I haven't tried to find her. Some things are better left in the past, especially when reopening them could undo what little peace has been earned. I hope she's healing, wherever she is. I hope she learns to see herself beyond what Ethan pulled her into. But I can't be part of her process. Not now. Maybe not ever. As for Ethan, the last I heard, he moved out of state. His name came up once in a call from a mutual acquaintance, someone who didn't know the full story. I didn't ask for details. I don't need to know where he is, what he's doing, or who he's with. I don't need to carry any part of his life anymore. He made choices that ended the chapter he was part of. That's all that matters now. I've started to write again. Just journals, mostly. Pages filled with small thoughts, quiet moments, pieces of myself I'm still learning to gather. Writing helps. It's the one space where I never feel like I have to explain or apologize. Some entries are about Liam, about the strength he's shown. Some are about who I used to be and how far I've come. Some are just reflections on the silence, how heavy it used to be, and how now, sometimes, it actually feels peaceful. There's no happy ending here in the traditional sense. No dramatic revenge, no sudden romance, no final closure wrapped in a bow. Just life. Raw, honest, quieter than before. I live each day more awake. More aware. Not afraid, but alert. That's what surviving betrayal does. It teaches you to stop sleeping through your own life, and yet, I'm not bitter. That surprises me most of all. I thought I would be. I thought I'd carry resentment like armor. But what I carry now is clarity. I know who I am. I know what I deserve. And I know that even in the darkest moment, I didn't abandon myself. Every day I wake up and choose to keep going. Not because I'm strong, but because I have no desire to live frozen in the moment he broke our family. I've moved forward, not perfectly, not painlessly, but truthfully. And that's the life I'm building now. Not defined by what was lost, but by what I found in its place. Me,